Hey, this is Joe from Presonus. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the MultiBand Dynamics plugin as a frequency learning tool. All right, in case you didn't know, if you open your Studio One Professional and you come over to Demos and Tutorials, if you have these installed, you'll see there's a song by Emma V called Electro Genie, which I have pulled open. Very cool song. And I'm going to use it as an example for the thing I want to show you today. So if you use Studio One Professional, if you look over here in your list of plugins, you have one called MultiBand Dynamics, also known as a multi-band compressor. I'm going to drag this and put it on my master fader in the post section, and I'm going to show you how we can use this to better familiarize ourselves with the different frequency ranges. Now, why do I bring this up? This is somewhat of a beginner topic, but you could feasibly have several years of experience recording and mixing and still not have a great handle on what the different frequency ranges sound like. And if that's the case, you're going to have a lot of trouble when it comes to figuring out problems when you're mixing, or even identifying problems in the recording process of why things do or don't sound right. So real quickly, a story. I remember for years, I'm talking years, I had a certain expectation of what I expected 100 hertz to sound like, okay? 100 hertz, it's just, if our hearing is from 0 to 20 kilohertz, then 100 hertz must be really, really low. And it is low, but it's not the lowest of frequencies. It's not even the lowest range. I would say 100 hertz, I would count that as low mid-range. 50 hertz, on the other hand, is very deep and that is that kind of chest pumping low end that we think about, whereas 100 hertz is, my friend Ian Shepard calls that the hooting frequency. It sounds a lot like hoo hoo hoo, which is in the lower frequencies, but is not a bass frequency, if that makes sense. Let me show you what I'm talking about, because when I came to that realization, my mixes improved because I was better able to identify where all the different frequencies were, so I wasn't trying to solve problems in the wrong area. Does that make sense? If you want to open Studio One and follow along while I set this up, that might be helpful. I'm going to set up my listening device from scratch here using MultiBand Dynamics. So pull up the presets and go to something like the BD limiter is a good one. No, not that one. The drum limiter. Try that one. And you'll notice there are 5 different bands. These are all set to the same everything, same threshold, same just about everything. So we're going to hit the edit all relatives so we can edit all of these at once. And we're going to set the ratio to 1:1. So I just command clicked on the ratio setting and it made all of them 1:1, which means there's no longer any compression happening when we run signal through this. Okay, that's really the only setup I'm going to do here. And if you want, you can actually, let's also change these frequencies. 0 to 80 works for me. These work. Let's make this top one 5K. So I'm just going to type 5K there. Let's make this bottom one 250 and 80 at the bottom. So these are the different bands. 0 to 80, 80 to 250, 250 to 1K, 1K to 5K, and then 5K and up. So those are the bands that I want. This will all make sense in just a second. And I'm going to store this preset as listen. So I can always come back to that preset later. So here's what happens. Let's just hit play, and we're going to listen to the song for a second. Then I'll show you what we can do with this to help learn the different frequency ranges.
Now that I'm here, please don't push me away.
So I like to think of frequency ranges, and Gregor makes fun of me because I think of everything in terms of buckets, but in this instance, it works really well. It actually almost kind of looks like a bucket. When you look at this screen, you'll see almost literally there are 5 different buckets of ranges. And what's great about MultiBand Dynamics is it allows us to either solo or mute each of these ranges, and that can be really helpful. So you might have in your head what 80 to 250 sounds like, but let's solo that out and see if you were right. I'm going to hit play, and then I'll hit solo.
Now that I'm here, please.
Did you see what happened there? You tend to, maybe this isn't you, but for a lot of people, and myself included, for a long time, I would have assumed when I solo 80 to 250, it's going to be do do do, going to hear all that kick drum sound. And it just isn't what happened. We heard a lot of vocal. We heard a lot of the synth, the whoop, whoop, and we heard some of the kick drum. I mean, obviously there's some kick drum there, but we didn't hear that deep, that chest thumping kick drum that we're expecting to hear. It's got a little bit of a punchiness, but not that depth, that lower octave that we're expecting to hear. That all happens down in the low frequencies. In other words, if we play everything minus this low end, if we mute the low end, you'll notice it's missing a whole lot at that point.
Now that I'm here, please don't push me away.
So even though numerically 0 to 80 is only 80 frequencies, right? And like 80 to 20K is almost 20,000 different frequencies. You got to think in terms of this is like a logarithmic thing. The way it looks visually here is more accurate than the way we think about it. We think about it linearly, like 0 to 80 should be the same as 1,000 to 1,080, but that's not true. 0 to 80 is a huge range of frequencies, and then 80 to 250 is another huge range. And one way to think about it is when you think of octaves, right? Those are, if we mapped out those frequencies, they would be double. The high one would be double the number of the low one. So 80 hertz is a higher octave from 40 hertz, an octave up. And then 160 is an octave up from 80. So you can think about it, if we're thinking about bass guitar, in just a handful of frequencies, we've gone up several octaves from the low 41 hertz E note up to a high E. It's just a handful of octaves, just a handful of numbers, and we encompass our entire bass guitar part. So the point I want to make here is don't let the numbers determine what's going on here. Learn what it sounds like. And you can do that with any song, any song. Pull a bunch of your favorite songs and do this exercise where you just listen to the whole song and then you listen to one section, or you mute out one section and listen to what disappears. Let's do that for a second.
Now that I'm here, please don't push me away. Never let me go, know that I'm here to stay. Your dream maker day. Just tell me your wishes. Tell me your wishes.
So you solo any specific range and it sounds weird and it sounds bad, and you can almost think, how does that contribute to the overall sound? And then you bring it back in, you realize, oh wow, these do all play together to create a really great sounding mix. This is obviously a great sounding mix, but when I took like the low mids out, it felt empty, and then I brought it back in and it felt like the whole mix was transformed. Low mids are so important. We don't want too much of them or it becomes muddy. I've talked about that before. But each section, it behooves you to really know what each section sounds like. So when you are mixing and you say, oh man, I need some big low end on that kick drum, you're not going to go boost 120 thinking you're going to get a bunch of low end. That's going to give you a bunch of doo woo woo woo, which maybe you want, maybe you don't. You're going to go boost at like 50 hertz to give that deep low end that we heard in the lows. And the same with mid-range, like the 250 to 1K range. It's a weird spot. It's hard to say, without just spending a lot of time with it, to say what those frequencies sound like, but there's this definite kind of somewhat warmth, but somewhat hollow sound in that range.
Now that I'm
Kind of sounds like the singer, sings like the all the lows and highs are gone. Those frequencies are important, and we need to know what they sound like so we can mess with them. If we have a mix where those frequencies are too loud and we wish they were quieter, we know which frequencies to go for. So thanks for watching. If you have Studio One Professional or you're a Sphere member, you have this plugin already, go play with it. Give yourself an exercise. Give yourself 20 minutes to just do this on a handful of your favorite songs, and hopefully you'll learn something and it'll help you have a better aural vocabulary to take into your next recording and mix session. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.